Hey, so we're back. I hope the first half was pretty easy. The next part, we're on page 216. We're importing a plain text file. So if you have a document from a client, whether it be copy, resumes, job applications, anything that you would need to create into a creative design, you can take your docx, RTF, plain text, Unicode, etc., those files and embed them into the document. So we're going to kind of zoom out and make sure everything's deselected. So we're going to go File, Place. And this is familiar for all of those who have worked with image trace. So we have L7 text.txt. And we're going to select Place. So now we have some text import options. So mine says, so what platform is going to kind of match it? Yours may be Windows, mine is a Mac Intel based. That's the platform for it to encode. You shouldn't change it. Keep it to whatever what you're using. Character set ANSI. It's just how it's kind of coded. And everything looks kind of matched. So I'm going to press OK. And as you notice, there's a little thumbnail with lots of text. And we're going to position the loaded text pointer in the upper left-hand corner of the Aqua guide box. So there's this blue guide box. I'm going to place it here where it says Anchor. We're going to click and drag down to the right. As you notice, the width and the height are constrained, always the same proportion. Drag until the pointer reaches the bottom of the Aqua guide box and release. You notice my text is there. So with our selection tool, we can click and drag it to the right edge of the Aqua guide box and overset. There we go. And we're going to pull in the guide box there. Just because I want you to see this red plus. So this red right there means there's an overset. That means there's extra text that for the out port. So on page 217, we're talking about overflow with text and text reflow. Now these ports we kind of talked about a little bit on page 215 with area type and point type for these threaded frames. It allows you to kind of overload the text into a different type frame. So the one on the left is an import, an outport. And if it's got a red box, that means it's ready to go to the next step. This helps you know if you need to resize, that there's text that needs to be threaded, or you need to adjust the type. So we're going to turn off these smart guides. I'm going to do Command U to turn them off. We're going to select with our selection tool this text, and we're going to select this outport right here. You may need to click it twice. As you can see, my cursor has it right there. If I double clicked it, it kind of places it right there, and that's not really helpful. So we're going to choose card 2. And we're going to select all on active artboard. So it kind of selects everything. We notice we actually have a type frame right there. So in this box there, you see that little link sign. If we click it, it's going to thread the type. Even if there isn't enough text to fill them, it'll still thread things together with multiple text objects. With the second type object still selected, you notice the line between the two objects. So if we see this right here, that shows to us that it's threaded. And if we want to hide it so we can work on our projects, we can go to View, Show Text Threads. Right there. Hide them or show them. So if we look at the output and import, they look like little triangles, and that lets us know that those are connected to each other. And if we delete the second type object, the type is pulled back to the original as overflow text. So we're just going to deselect and save. So the next part is creating columns of text, because having large text bodies is not as dynamic. So if we have two columns, it's easier for people to read the information, spread the information out with that on your page. But also, as a designer, it looks very strong that we know how to make columns. We know how to make viewers read this text without getting overloaded on very long, wide lines. People typically don't enjoy reading very wide bodies of text. They like them kind of short and small, get the information without having to go one end to the next, and being distracted by a lot of illustration. So we're still in Artboard 2, and I know that because we're right here. And we are going to go in our menu bar Type, Area Type Options. So we should have text selected, type, area type options. It's going to open up this dialog box. And we're going to take columns up to 2. And you notice there's some things changed with the span. That's kind of between the space between them, the gutter to the edge. And actually here is where the text flows if you have a bunch of different boxes. So I'm actually at cancel because we actually want to select this type over here. Type, area type options, columns 2. And we're going to actually pull this in right there. It kind of balances line, circle, and those are kind of levels to understand without doing two different boxes and trying to kind of match them together. You can have one type frame, do 2 columns, and pull that up to nest them together. Deselect, File S. The next we're going to do is formatting type. When it comes to text, you can format it using character and paragraph formatting, 5 fill, stroke, attribute, its transparency, these changes to a single character, a range of characters, all characters, everything within the artboard. So we're going to go to Artboard 1, and we're going to zoom in solely as the main threaded right here. So we don't have a lot of type here, but we've got some type here. So using our type tool, we're going to just double click, we're going to select all, everything in there, and if we miss the text, it's going to create a point type. So if you do create a point type, you just do Edit, Undo Type. So we're going to click on the arrow on the right of the font menu, which is in our control panel, and it kind of does a drop down box, and here's our fonts. If you're a font downloader hoarder like me, you'll have a lot of stuff to get through. And if you want to download fonts, I like going to dafont.com. There's a lot of great font websites. Pinterest actually has a great collection of cool fonts. Some fonts you need to pay for. Some fonts are free. Some have limited use for if you can't use them commercially, only for personal use. So it's a good idea to keep an idea of which fonts you can and can't use, especially when you work for a larger company. Fonts can have so much fun and play, and we can talk about them later. There's also Adobe Typekit, which the 2015 textbook talks about a lot. The 2013 doesn't. It is a new option to Adobe pulls fonts they've worked with, they've managed in through Adobe, and if you pull fonts from Typekit, you don't have to close out the program, reopen, which is one of the great pluses for it. Usually if I go to download a font right now, I'd have to close the program and open it back up to load in those fonts within here. So while we're in here, we're looking for MyRed Pro. And then there's a couple of different options, and we want, if we kind of click down here, we have more options. And these are different weights. There's condensed, condensed italic, bold condensed italic, regular italic, semi-bold, italic, bold, and bold italic. And we'll talk about different options, but we're going to choose semi-bold. And that's going to change the type for all of our threaded text. Now we're going to scroll down the artboard where it says Thursday at 6:30 p.m. We're going to double click all of it, and we're going to change the font. So if we can actually go to type, font, and we can change it through here as well. We want Adobe Garamond Pro. Which is actually under Garamond, not Adobe. There it goes. And then over here there's different options, and we want to choose bold italic. So we're going to insert the cursor next to Safari Zoo. And select all, and when the text is selected, click whatever font is listed in the font menu in the control panel, and here we're going to start typing in the words GA, and that's going to help us narrow down our font. So this doesn't do it as easy. The book does it as kind of alphabetical. GA, mine kind of does it in a different way. But when we start typing it, it kind of narrows down the font where GA are next to it. If we add an R, it's going to filter it more. We're looking for Adobe Garamond Pro. So if you have tons of fonts like me, this is going to help you narrow it down. And we want just the regular one. Right there. It talks about font families. We'll talk about them later. I'm going to do a Command S to save our document. So with Safari Zoo located, we're going to change the font size. So up here in our control panel, we're going to change it up to 36. And that may not be big enough. Again, like, we're kind of in a shortened area. So it wants us to change it to 37. You can always type in right here. As you can see, this isn't big enough, so you take our selection tool and kind of resize it out. And just kind of drag it over so we can see everything in. So we're going to go find, so we're going to deselect and we're going to find ZooTales up here. As I double click it, I kind of highlight all of it. And remember, this is a point type, so it doesn't have a bounding box. So up here, we're just going to type in 74. As you can see, it made it huge. And what we're going to do is drag the text object down if need be, so it stays on the artboard. So if it's a little over, that's fine. There we go. And if we were just to do this, it kind of resizes our type. So with ZooTales, we're going to stay on ZooTales and we're going to change font color. Fonts can have fills and strokes, and it's good to play around with both options. So with both selected, we're looking at our control panel, and we're going to go to our stroke. Right now it's none. We're going to change the stroke to white. And now we have a white stroke, and we're going to take the stroke weight up to 2 point. You can also play around with gradients and patterns within type as well. But with strokes, it's good. So when you have contrasting backgrounds like this, the type pulls out. So we're going to go take our type tool, which we're selected, and we're going to take our threaded frames, select all. As you can see, it selects from both frames right there. We're going to change the swatches. We're going to change the fill to white, which will lose part of it. Now we're going to change the size to 15 to make it bigger. And then we're going to select, deselect. And we're going to select Safari Zoo and hold down Shift for Thursdays at. So we can select both of these objects at the same time. And we're just going to change the fill to white. And that's a quick way to choose multiple fonts at the same time, if you need to adjust them all. So the next thing we're going to do is changing additional text attributes. So we're going to go to Window Type. And this opens up this panel. Oh, I need to select which one. Window Type, and we're choosing Character. And this opens up this new panel right here. There's the fonts, the font family. This is an easy way to make those adjustments without having to go up to this control panel. So there's a bunch of different options. So mine wasn't open, so I had to go to Show Options within these drop downs. Remember, we had to do that with the color. We have to do that here as well. So this is for our Touch Type tool, which we'll play around in a little bit. This is our font family, font style, or weight. D is our size, kerning, and that's the space between each letter. We'll talk about that later. Vertical scale, baseline shift, which we'll talk about later. If we want all caps, so we need to make some all caps real quick that we didn't do initially. Small caps, superscript, subscript. These are great if you have to have times or like 15ths or something, when you have to have the TH or something. It's really helpful for that. Underline and strike through. And then up here we have deleting, which is the space between each paragraph. The tracking is sort of like kerning, that's for all the characters. Horizontal scale, character rotation. So with our threaded object, we're going to click on it and select all. I'm doing just a Command A or Control A if you're a Windows person. And it's kind of difficult because it's all white, but we're going to fix it by turning on a layer. So in our layers panel, we're going to open up this background, and that takes our type and kind of pulls it on out. So we're still on character in our control panel. You can actually pull this panel down there too, but I like pulling it through there too. And we're going to click on the leading. Remember, that's the space between each font. Think of it as like double spacing when you're writing a paper. And we're going to take the spacing to 17. And in a vertical space is adjusting. And with the Safari type tool still selected, insert the cursor above the text under Safari Zoo. So we're under Safari Zoo. And we're going to just kind of select all of it. And we're going to pull the tracking, which is this, and we're going to make the tracking -50. And the tracking is the space between the characters. It's equal spaces between the characters. We're going to change it all to uppercase. It wants us to do type, change case, but you could also use this button there. And we need to resize our type box right here so everything fits within our box. So next we're going to go to Thursdays at. And we kind of triple clicked. We're going to change the font size to 33. We're just going to drag this with our cursor. Make sure 6:30 p.m. is still on the second line. And we're double click on to the left side of the characters, and we're going to click on the vertical scale, which is right here. Right now it's at 100%. We're going to type it to 120. And you see it's little adjustments like this that we don't have in other programs. So those little tiny adjustments help the text push it more. It makes the type look more unique. So we're going to save our file. The next we're going to be modifying with the touch type tool, which is kind of difficult. Really fun and really great because it's now within Adobe CC, something we didn't have in the CS6 series. See you for our next video.